The promise of tomorrow. The salt-tinged breeze carried whispers of possibility as Nishant traced charcoal lines across his weathered sketchbook. From his perch on the jagged rocks overlooking Malabar Bay, he captured the fishing boats returning at sunset, their silhouettes gliding across the amber-streaked water. His fingers worked quickly, smudging shadows beneath the vessels, trying to convey the weight of tradition these boats carried, the same tradition that threatened to anchor his own dreams to this small coastal village. "I knew I'd find you here," came a gentle voice behind him. Priya approached, her footsteps barely audible against the rhythm of waves. Her indigo dress fluttered around her ankles, herbs from her morning gathering tucked carefully in the basket at her side. Nishant smiled without looking up. "The light is perfect today. See how it catches on the water?" Priya settled beside him, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear as she leaned forward to examine his work. "It's beautiful," she said, her eyes reflecting genuine admiration. "You capture something beyond just the boats. There's feeling in these lines." "My father calls it wasted time," Nishant replied, his voice carrying a familiar resignation. "The Sharma family has been fishermen for generations. Art doesn't put food on the table." Priya's fingers lightly touched the edge of his drawing. "Your father sees only what has been, not what could be." She reached into her basket and pulled out a small package wrapped in banana leaf. "I brought you something." Inside lay several handmade paintbrushes, their handles carved from driftwood, bristles carefully bound with copper wire. "I traded medicines with the traveling merchant for proper horsehair," she explained, watching his expression soften. "You deserve better tools than charcoal sticks." Nishant carefully lifted one brush, testing its weight in his palm. "Priya, these must have cost—" "Consider it an investment," she interrupted, her smile carrying quiet confidence. "When you're famous in Delhi or Mumbai, I'll tell everyone I knew you when you drew with sticks on the beach." The evening lanterns began appearing along the shoreline, pinpricks of warmth against the deepening blue. Tomorrow, Nishant would board the train to Mumbai, carrying little more than his drawings and the letter of acceptance from the National Institute of Fine Arts, a scholarship opportunity that had arrived like an answered prayer. "I'm terrified," he admitted, voicing the fear he'd hidden from everyone else. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm just a village boy with foolish dreams?" Priya took his charcoal-stained hand in hers. "Then you'll come home and we'll find new dreams." "But Nishant," her voice grew firm, "you are already enough. The city will simply reveal what I've always seen." As dusk deepened around them, they spoke of the future, his studies, the artists he might meet, the exhibitions he dreamed of holding. Priya listened, offering encouragement without revealing the hollow feeling spreading beneath her ribs at the thought of his departure. "I'll write to you," Nishant promised as they walked back toward the village, lanterns illuminating their path. "Every week I'll tell you everything." "And I'll be here," Priya responded, "gathering my herbs, healing the villagers, waiting for your letters." At her doorway, Nishant hesitated. There were words balanced on his tongue, confessions that had never found voice during their years of friendship. Instead, he pressed the drawing from that evening into her hands. "Keep this," he whispered, "so you'll remember the bay exactly as it was today." Priya took the sketch, their fingers brushing. "I don't need drawings to remember, Nishant." Her eyes held his, conveying everything neither had courage to speak aloud. "Some things become part of us, like the tide becomes part of the shore." As he walked away, Nishant felt both lighter and heavier, buoyed by possibility yet anchored by what remained unspoken between them. Tomorrow would bring the screech of train wheels, the blur of unfamiliar landscapes, and the beginning of his pursuit. But tonight, under the canopy of stars reflecting on Malabar Bay, he carried the quiet certainty of Priya's faith in him, a talisman against the uncertainty ahead. Part 2. Canvas of Ambition. Mumbai greeted Nishant with a cacophony of sound and color that overwhelmed his senses. After the rhythmic predictability of waves on the shore, the city's constant motion felt like being caught in a whirlpool. His small rented room in Bandra sat above a spice shop, filling his clothing with the scent of cardamom and turmeric. Each evening he would open his window and sketch the chaotic street below, trying to capture the essence of urban life while fighting the persistent homesickness that settled in his chest. The National Institute of Fine Arts was both exhilarating and intimidating. Professor Verma, his primary instructor, was unimpressed by Nishant's portfolio of fishing boats and coastal landscapes. Technical skill? Yes, the professor had said during their first critique, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. But where is your voice? What are you trying to say that hasn't been said before? Those words haunted Nishant as he worked through sleepless nights, pushing beyond the comfortable boundaries of his previous work. He began experimenting with bold colors that would have seemed wasteful back home, where practicality always trumped expression. The first letter to Priya took him 7 attempts to write. How could he describe the overwhelming loneliness amidst millions of people? How could he admit that his classmates, with their expensive art supplies and international educations, made him feel like an imposter? In the end, he wrote of the bustling markets, the architectural wonders, and his new techniques, keeping his doubts carefully hidden between enthusiastic descriptions. Priya's replies arrived with sprigs of dried coastal herbs pressed between the pages, carrying the scent of home. She wrote of village happenings with such vivid detail that he could close his eyes and feel transported back to Malabar Bay. Her unwavering confidence in his talent became a lifeline during his darkest moments of self-doubt. 6 months into his studies, an opportunity arose. A prestigious gallery was hosting a student exhibition. The competition for wall space was fierce, but Professor Verma unexpectedly nominated Nishant's work. Your latest pieces show promise, he said, pointing to Nishant's series of paintings that merged traditional fishing scenes with bold, almost surreal color palettes. You're beginning to find your language, the intersection of where you're from and where you're going. The exhibition changed everything. Rajiv Malhotra, a well-known collector of emerging artists, purchased 2 of Nishant's paintings and commissioned 3 more. Suddenly, doors began opening. A local magazine featured his work. Other galleries expressed interest. His classmates, who had previously overlooked him, now sought his company at cafes and art events. Among them was Tara Desai, a sculptor whose family owned several galleries across India. Beautiful and sophisticated, she took a particular interest in Nishant, introducing him to influential people in the art world and helping him navigate the complex social dynamics of the city's creative elite. You have something authentic that these pretentious art school graduates lack, she told him over coffee one evening. Don't lose that connection to your roots. It's what makes your work special. Their friendship gradually evolved into something more, though Nishant found himself holding back in ways he couldn't fully explain. When Tara kissed him during a rain-soaked walk after a gallery opening, he responded with a mixture of desire and guilt, the latter catching him by surprise. That night, he pulled out Priya's most recent letter from beneath his pillow. Her words described the monsoon season in the village, how the fishermen prepared their boats, how she had developed a new herbal remedy for the children's coughs. There was no claim on his heart, no expectations, just the steady presence of someone who believed in him before anyone else did. He began writing to Priya less frequently. Each unanswered letter from her added to his growing shame, until eventually he stopped writing altogether. It seemed kinder to let her move on than to string her along while his life in Mumbai became increasingly permanent. 3 years passed in a blur of exhibitions, commissions, and growing recognition. Nishant moved from his tiny room to a spacious apartment with a studio overlooking the Arabian Sea. His work evolved, gaining complexity and confidence. Yet he often found himself painting coastal scenes from memory in the early morning hours when sleep eluded him. You should visit your village, Tara suggested one evening as they prepared for his largest solo exhibition to date. Reconnect with your inspiration. Nishant nodded absently, arranging his paintings in the gallery space. His new collection, titled Echoes of Shore, featured abstract interpretations of his childhood memories, rendered in rich blues and golds, actually, he admitted quietly. I haven't been back since I left. Tara paused, studying his face. 4 years is a long time, Nishant. Are you avoiding something? Or someone? The question hung between them, unanswered but revealing. That night, as Mumbai's lights sparkled below his apartment window, Nishant found himself sketching a familiar face from memory. Priya's gentle eyes, the curve of her smile, the way her hair fell across her shoulder when she leaned forward to examine his drawings. Success had found him, just as she had always believed it would. But in the quiet moments between accolades and achievements, Nishant couldn't escape the feeling that he had left the most valuable part of himself behind on those rocky shores of Malabar Bay. Seasons of silence. The monsoon rains lashed against the windows of Priya's small clinic, a steady percussion accompanying the rhythmic grinding of her mortar and pestle. 4 years of seasons had cycled through the village since Nishant's departure, each one etching subtle changes into the landscape of her life. The once modest herbal dispensary her mother had run from their home had transformed, under Priya's care, into a proper healing center that served not only their village but 3 neighboring communities as well. Breathe deeply now, she instructed Devi, a pregnant woman in her 3rd trimester, pressing a warm compress infused with ginger and tulsi against her lower back. The baby is simply restless today. This will help with the discomfort. Devi exhaled slowly, her tension visibly easing. Your hands have magic, Priyaji. My mother says the spirits blessed you with healing gifts. Priya smiled, continuing her gentle movements. Not spirits, just knowledge passed down from my mother and her mother before her. She reached for a small glass bottle on the nearby shelf. Take 3 drops of this tincture in warm water before sleeping. It will help both you and the baby rest. After Devi departed, Priya tidied her workspace, arranging dried herbs in labeled jars and recording treatments in her leather-bound journal. The clinic walls were adorned with illustrations of medicinal plants, most drawn by her own hand, though nowhere near as skillfully as Nishant could have rendered them. In the corner, carefully preserved behind glass, hung the drawing of fishing boats returning to Malabar Bay at sunset, the last gift he had given her. The letters had come regularly at first, enthusiastic descriptions of Mumbai's vastness, his struggles and small victories at the institute, questions about village life. Priya had responded to each one, sending coastal herbs and detailed accounts of home, carefully avoiding any words that might burden him with her longing. Then gradually his letters grew shorter, less frequent, until they stopped altogether. She had seen his name in a newspaper that the school teacher brought from the city, a small article about emerging artists, featuring a striking painting of stylized fishing boats against a crimson sky. Pride had surged through her alongside a bittersweet pang of recognition. He had transformed their shared memories into something beautiful for others to see, just as she had always believed he would. Priya, called a voice, pulling her from her thoughts. Lakshmi, the village headman's wife, entered the clinic, shaking rainwater from her umbrella. I've brought the special honey you asked for. My cousin's bees feed only on wildflowers in the high meadows. Perfect timing, Priya replied, accepting the clay pot. This will make the cough remedy much more effective for the children. Lakshmi lingered, her expression shifting to one of motherly concern. The festival committee met yesterday. We want you to lead the healing ceremony this year. Priya looked up in surprise. The annual Lantern Festival honored the village's ancestors and celebrated new beginnings. The healing ceremony was traditionally led by the most respected elder healer, but surely Anjali Auntie would. Anjali herself suggested you, Lakshmi interrupted gently. She says your knowledge now exceeds hers, and it's time for the younger generation to carry our traditions forward. That evening, as rain continued to drum against the thatched roof, Priya sat cross-legged on her veranda, sorting through her mother's old manuscripts of herbal formulations by lamplight. The honor of leading the ceremony brought a quiet satisfaction, a confirmation that her dedication to healing had earned her a place of respect within the community. A beautiful woman like you, married to her herbs and potions, her father often lamented, especially after declining yet another marriage proposal on her behalf. The matchmaker had visited 3 times in the past year alone, bringing offers from respectable families in neighboring villages. The most persistent suitor was Vikram, the educated son of a prosperous merchant who had recently returned from university to expand his family's business along the coastal region. Vikram was kind and thoughtful, bringing rare medicinal plants whenever he traveled, and engaging her in conversations about healing practices from other regions. His interest was genuine, his patience remarkable. Yet each time he gently approached the subject of marriage, Priya found herself making excuses about her commitments to the village. The heart cannot be reasoned with, her mother had once told her. It beats to its own rhythm, regardless of what the mind decides is sensible. Those words returned to Priya now as she traced her finger over a sketch of a rare flowering herb in the manuscript, a drawing she had attempted several times but could never quite capture with Nishant's precision. The monsoon season gave way to autumn, and preparations for the Lantern Festival intensified. Under Anjali Auntie's guidance, Priya gathered the sacred herbs needed for the ceremony, learning the ancient chants that would accompany the ritual lighting of the community flame. 1 week before the festival, as golden afternoon light spilled across the clinic floor, Lakshmi's daughter Meena burst through the door breathless with excitement. "Priya Didi, have you heard? Nishant Sharma has returned. His mother is telling everyone he's become a famous artist in Mumbai." The mortar Priya had been holding slipped from her fingers, nearly shattering before she caught it against her lap. "When?" she asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "This morning. His hair is different and he wears city clothes, but it's definitely him," Meena continued, oblivious to Priya's turbulent emotions. "He brought expensive gifts for his parents. Everyone is talking about it." That night, Priya stood at the edge of the bay where they had spent countless evenings, watching the same moon cast silver pathways across the water. The sketch he had given her was etched in her memory more vividly than the actual landscape before her eyes. 4 years of silence stretched between them like an uncrossable chasm, yet her treacherous heart quickened at the mere thought of seeing him again. "Some things become part of us, like the tide becomes part of the shore," she had told him the night before he left. Standing now where they had once stood together, Priya wondered if she had been speaking a truth about him, or about herself. The tide's return. The village had both changed and remained exactly the same, creating a disorienting sense of temporal displacement for Nishant as he walked its familiar paths. New concrete structures stood alongside traditional homes. Power lines now stretched where there had once been only open sky, and several fishing boats boasted modern motors instead of sails. Yet the rhythm of life, the morning bustle at the market, children playing near the temple, elders gathering under the ancient banyan tree, flowed with the same predictable current he remembered. Nishant's homecoming had been easier than anticipated with his parents. His mother had wept, touching his face as if confirming he wasn't an apparition, while his father had maintained a gruff exterior that softened when he saw the financial security Nishant's art had provided. The awkwardness of his prolonged absence dissolved in their genuine joy at his return, though unspoken questions lingered in their exchanges. "Will you stay for the Lantern Festival?" his mother asked over breakfast on his 3rd day home, carefully casual despite the hope threading her voice. "That's the plan," Nishant replied, sipping the cardamom tea that tasted of childhood. "My next exhibition isn't for 2 months." What he didn't mention was his conversation with Tara before leaving Mumbai, their mutual acknowledgement that what existed between them lacked the depth both deserved. "You've never fully arrived in Mumbai," she had said with perceptive kindness. "Part of you is still waiting on that shore." Now, as he stood at the village's edge watching fishermen mend their nets, Nishant felt the strange doubling of his identity, the successful urban artist overlaid upon the village boy who had once dreamed of escape. He had intentionally avoided the paths that might lead to Priya, unsure what he would say after years of inexcusable silence. "So the prodigal son returns with his fancy clothes and city ways," came a teasing voice. Nishant turned to find Rohan, his childhood friend, approaching with a wide grin. Now broader in shoulder and darker from constant sun exposure, Rohan captained his own fishing vessel, a position of respect in the community. Their embrace was immediate and genuine, years of separation collapsing in shared laughter and backslaps. "Look at you," Rohan said, stepping back to assess him. "The great artist, just as Priya always said you would be." At her name, Nishant's smile faltered. "How is she?" Rohan's expression shifted subtly. "She's well, respected throughout the coastal villages for her healing. People travel for days to seek her remedies." He studied Nishant's face. "She never left despite opportunities. There was talk last year of her joining a medical research program in Bangalore, but she declined." "And is she—" Nishant couldn't finish the question. "Married," Rohan supplied, his gaze direct. "No, though not for lack of suitors. Vikram Mehta has been particularly persistent, educated, kind, from a good family. She hasn't accepted, but the village gossips say it's only a matter of time." Each word landed like a stone in Nishant's stomach, though he had no right to the jealousy that flared within him. He had been the one to sever their connection, to build a new life that excluded her. The festival preparations keep her busy, Rohan continued. She's leading the healing ceremony this year, a significant honor. As dusk approached, Nishant found himself drawn to the small temple overlooking the bay, a quiet place where he had often sketched in solitude. The stone steps were worn smoother than he remembered, generations of footsteps deepening the ancient grooves. At the top, he froze. A slender figure in a deep green sari stood at the railing, her back to him as she gazed out at the darkening water. He would have recognized Priya anywhere. The 4 years had transformed the girl he knew into a woman of quiet dignity, her posture conveying a self-possession that both intimidated and captivated him. Her hair, longer now, was caught in a simple braid adorned with fragrant jasmine blossoms. Nishant considered retreating, sparing them both the awkwardness of this first encounter, but as if sensing his presence, Priya turned. Their eyes met across the weathered stone pavilion, and time seemed to suspend between them, stretching, contracting, rearranging itself around this moment of recognition. "Nishant," she said simply, her voice carrying the same melodic quality he had preserved in memory. "Priya." His own voice sounded foreign to his ears. "I'm sorry to disturb your solitude." "This place has always been for both of us," she replied, her composure remarkable compared to the chaos he felt internally. "The village is buzzing with tales of your success. I saw your painting in the newspaper last year. It was beautiful." Shame and gratitude tangled within him. "You recognized it?" A slight smile softened her features. "Of course. No one else sees our bay quite the way you do." The breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine as silence expanded between them, heavy with unspoken words. Nishant moved closer, still maintaining a respectful distance. "I owe you an apology," he began, the inadequacy of the words painful in his throat. "The letters. You needed to find your way," Priya interrupted gently. "I understood that." "No," Nishant insisted, finding courage in her steady gaze. "I was a coward. I convinced myself it was kindness to let you move on. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that holding on to home would somehow diminish what I was building." "I was wrong, Priya, so wrong." The last rays of sunlight caught in her eyes, illuminating emotions too complex to name. "We all make choices, Nishant. I chose to stay, to build something here. You chose to leave, to create elsewhere. There's no blame in different paths." "But there is blame in broken promises," he countered, moving closer still. "I promised to write, to remember. Instead, I tried to forget, thinking it would make succeeding easier." "And did it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," he admitted. "You were there in every coastal scene I painted, in every sunrise color I mixed. I succeeded because of what this place, what you, gave me, not by forgetting it." Festival preparations had transformed the village center, with colorful cloth banners strung between homes and fragrant marigold garlands adorning doorways. Children practiced traditional dances while craftsmen constructed the bamboo platforms, where lanterns would be launched into the night sky. Carrying prayers and wishes upward, Priya gestured toward the activity below. "I should go. The ceremony preparations need attending to." "Rohan mentioned you're leading it this year," Nishant said. "That's a tremendous honor." "Life continued here while you were becoming famous," she replied, a hint of teasing warming her tone. "We all grew in different ways." As she moved to leave, Nishant gently caught her hand, the first contact between them since his return. The touch sent a current of recognition through them both, momentarily stripping away the intervening years. "Will you show me?" he asked softly. "Will you show me who you've become, Priya? I'd like to know her." The vulnerability in his request seemed to reach her. Her fingers briefly tightened around his before she withdrew her hand. "Come to the ceremony tomorrow night," she said. "Watch the lanterns rise. After that, we can talk." As she descended the temple steps, her green sari catching the last golden light, Nishant remained motionless, suspended between the life he had built and the one he had abandoned. For the first time since returning, he felt the stirring of something beyond nostalgia or regret, a tentative hope that perhaps some tides, once gone out, might indeed return to shore. Patterns of love. The village square glowed with hundreds of earthen lamps, their flames steady despite the gentle coastal breeze. Families gathered in their finest clothes, children darting between adults with excitement as musicians tuned their instruments near the central platform. The Lantern Festival marked the end of harvest season and honored ancestors while celebrating new beginnings, a fitting metaphor that wasn't lost on Nishant as he stood at the gathering's edge, watching the preparations unfold. He had spent the day in his childhood room, sketching frantically, not the scenic bay or village scenes he was known for, but Priya as he had seen her at the temple. His fingers worked to capture the quiet strength in her posture, the knowing depth in her eyes, the way maturity had refined rather than altered her features. The resulting portrait felt like both atonement and offering. "There you are." His mother approached, resplendent in a crimson sari with gold embroidery. "You should be at the front with the other honored guests. Headman Reddy has been asking for you." Nishant shook his head. "I'd rather observe from here, Ma. This isn't my celebration to lead." His mother studied him with the perceptive gaze that had always seen through his pretenses. "You've been distracted since your visit to the temple yesterday. Have you spoken with her?" "Briefly," he admitted, unsurprised by her intuition. "She's different. Stronger. More assured." "Of course she is," his mother replied matter-of-factly. "Priya found her purpose here while you found yours in the city. That's how life works. We grow into the spaces we inhabit." She adjusted her palu over her shoulder. "Though some spaces can never be truly filled when certain people are absent from them." Before Nishant could respond, drummers began a rhythmic beat that signaled the ceremony's commencement. The crowd parted as Priya emerged from the Healers Guild tent, dressed in a saffron sari embroidered with ancient symbols of healing and protection. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, adorned with a crown of medicinal flowers and herbs. In her hands she carried a large brass vessel filled with sacred fire. The drumming intensified as she moved with deliberate steps toward the central platform. Elder women from the village walked behind her, carrying smaller vessels and bundles of herbs. The familiar ritual suddenly appeared new through Nishant's eyes, not as the cultural tradition he had taken for granted in childhood, but as a living connection to generations past and future. Priya's voice, clear and confident, rose above the drums as she began the invocation. She spoke the ancient Sanskrit verses with perfect pronunciation, calling upon the elements to bless the community in the coming year. As she moved through the ritual, adding precious herbs to the sacred fire and guiding the elders through their roles, Nishant witnessed the respect she commanded, not through authority but through authentic presence. When the ceremonial fire blazed at its brightest, village families came forward one by one, lighting their paper lanterns from the sacred flame. Children's faces glowed with wonder as parents helped them prepare their offerings, small notes with prayers and wishes tucked inside the delicate structures. Gradually, the night sky filled with ascending lights like earthbound stars returning to the heavens. Nishant remained transfixed, observing rather than participating, until a familiar voice broke his reverie. "You haven't lit your lantern." Priya stood before him, somehow having slipped away from her ceremonial duties. In her hands she held an unlit lantern more intricately designed than the others, with painted patterns along its paper panels. "I didn't prepare one," Nishant admitted. "I made this one earlier today," she said, offering it to him, "in case you might need it." Their fingers brushed as he accepted the lantern, the simple contact conveying more than casual touch. Upon closer inspection, he recognized the patterns decorating the lantern. They were motifs from his earliest paintings, the ones he had created before leaving the village. "You remembered these," he said, tracing a finger over a stylized wave pattern. "Some things don't require effort to remember, Nishant." Her gaze held his steadily. "They simply become part of us." His own words from 4 years ago returned to him with gentle precision. Together they walked to the sacred fire, where Priya guided him through lighting the lantern. As the heat filled the delicate structure, preparing it for flight, she nodded toward a path leading away from the celebration. "Walk with me?" They followed the moonlit trail to their old meeting place on the rocks overlooking the bay, now empty of revelers. Behind them, the village celebration continued. Music and laughter carried on the breeze, while above, dozens of lanterns drifted like luminous jellyfish across the night sky. "I never asked what wish you placed in your lantern," Priya said as they settled on the familiar stone outcropping. "I didn't write one," Nishant confessed. It felt presumptuous somehow. Priya laughed softly. "The successful artist too humble to make a wish? Mumbai has changed you indeed." The teasing affection in her voice emboldened him. "What about you? What did you wish for?" "That would be telling," she replied with a smile that faded into seriousness. "Though I suspect you already know." Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable but charged with unspoken possibilities. The waves below kept their eternal rhythm, advancing and retreating against the shore, constant yet ever-changing like the relationship between them. "I met someone in Mumbai," Nishant said finally, needing complete honesty between them. "Tara. She helped me navigate the art world, believed in my work. We were together for nearly 2 years. If the revelation pained Priya, she didn't show it. And now? We ended things before I returned here. She knew—" He hesitated, gathering courage. "She knew my heart was divided, that I had left something essential behind when I left this shore." Priya considered his words, her profile illuminated by moonlight as she gazed across the water. "Vikram has asked me to marry him. 3 times now?" The statement landed like a physical blow, though Nishant had been prepared for it by Rohan's words. "He's a fortunate man to have earned your consideration." "I haven't given him an answer," Priya replied, turning to face him fully. "Because despite all logic and sense, despite years of silence, my heart has been frustratingly stubborn." Hope flared within Nishant, tempered immediately by the weight of his past choices. "I have no right to ask anything of you, Priya. I disappeared from your life without explanation, built a career and relationships that excluded you entirely." "True," she acknowledged without bitterness. "And I built a life here without you, a meaningful one filled with purpose and respect." She gestured toward the village. "I'm needed here. These people depend on my knowledge, my healing. I won't abandon that." "I would never ask you to," Nishant said earnestly. "Your work is too important, too much a part of who you are." "Just as your art is part of you," she replied. "I saw your exhibition catalog. Your mother showed me when it arrived last year. Your work belongs in galleries, in places where it can inspire and move people." The impasse between them hung in the air. 2 lives built separately, with different foundations and purposes, yet connected by an undeniable thread that had withstood time and distance. Nishant reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper. "I made something for you today." He handed her the portrait he had sketched that morning. Priya unfolded it carefully, her breath catching as she recognized herself, not as she had been 4 years ago, but as she was now, rendered with all the skill and insight his years of artistic development had provided. The portrait captured not just her physical features, but something more essential: her quiet strength, her compassionate wisdom, her steadfast nature. "This is how you see me?" she whispered. "This is how you are," he corrected gently. "Though no drawing could ever fully capture you, Priya." She traced a finger over the lines, then looked up at him with eyes bright with unshed tears. "What are we to do then? You belong to the world of creation, I to the world of healing. They exist in different places." Nishant took a deep breath, voicing the idea that had been forming since their encounter at the temple. "Perhaps not. The Institute has been asking me to teach master classes for promising students from rural areas. I've been considering establishing a small art school, a place where village children, with talent but no resources, could learn techniques that might otherwise be inaccessible to them." Interest sparked in Priya's expression. "Here? Why not here?" he replied, gaining confidence. "I could teach during festival seasons, travel for exhibitions when needed, but make this village the base for something new. And between teaching sessions I could paint. This bay has always been my truest inspiration." "And Mumbai?" she asked. "Your gallery connections, your patrons?" "Modern technology makes distance less absolute," Nishant said. "And perhaps—" He hesitated, then continued with quiet certainty. "Perhaps some of your medicinal knowledge could be documented, illustrated properly for future generations. Our talents could complement each other, create something neither of us could achieve alone." The idea hung between them, vibrant with possibility. Priya's expression softened as she considered it, her practical nature evaluating what his suggestion might mean for both their futures. "It wouldn't be easy," she said finally. "There would be compromises, adjustments, times when we'd be apart." "Nothing worthwhile comes without challenges," Nishant replied, gently taking her hand. "But I've learned that success means little when there's no one to share it with." especially when that person has believed in you from the beginning. Above them, the last of the festival lanterns drifted toward the horizon, carrying wishes and prayers into the vast night. One floated directly overhead, the specially decorated one Priya had prepared for him, its light illuminating their faces as they sat together on the rocks where their story had begun. "I can't promise perfection," Nishant said softly, "but I can promise presence. I can promise to never again mistake ambition for fulfillment, or distance for necessary growth." Priya's fingers interlaced with his, the gesture bridging 4 years of separation with the simplicity of touch. "And I can't promise that building something new will be without difficulties," she responded. "But I can promise patience. I can promise to see you as you are now, not only as the boy who left." The lantern above them caught a thermal current and surged higher, its light diminishing as it joined the stars. Neither spoke as they watched it ascend, each understanding that what lay before them was not a return to what had been, but the creation of something new. A pattern of love woven from separate threads of experience, stronger for having been tested by time and distance. In the village below, the festival continued its joyful noise. Soon they would return to it, rejoining the community celebration as changed individuals with a shared vision of possibility. But for now, they remained on their rocky perch overlooking Malabar Bay, two people who had found separate strengths only to discover that together, they formed something greater than either could have imagined alone. As if sealing an unspoken agreement, Priya leaned forward and pressed her lips gently to his, their first kiss, yet somehow carrying the familiarity of souls who had always known each other. When they parted, her smile held all the warmth and certainty that Nishant had carried in memory during his years away. "Welcome home," she whispered, and in those two simple words Nishant found the answer to the wish he hadn't dared to write.